wanna see your face. I wanna know your heart. I wanna walk with you every day of my life, God.
Hi, welcome to Devos with Debbie. Today we're going to be looking at Numbers 27, specifically the portion where Joshua succeeds Moses. And in here we really see the importance of God-appointed leaders. And in this passage, God basically says, okay, look at the land that I'm giving Israel. And now that you've seen it, you need to remember that you're not going forward. So you need to pass the leadership on to someone else, which is probably just a really hard reality that Moses had to live with, the consequences of his sin, knowing that he disobeyed God. And it's no laughing matter. And it means that his disobedience meant he could not partake of the fulfillment of the promise. But God wanted to take care of his people. It says specifically that the congregation of the Lord might not be as sheep that have no shepherd. And God takes care of his people. And he appoints people over the church, over the congregation, so that we can follow his word. Let's be honest, we are much like sheep. We make mistakes, we go with the flow. So yeah, one of the things that he says is that Joshua is to be commissioned in front of everyone. And I find this particularly interesting. Really, there's not just a passing of the baton from Moses to Joshua, like just do it, go, have fun. But there's a real transition there of what I would say maybe discipleship now, where Moses shows him the ropes, gives him the baton, and in front of everyone said, this is your new leader. Follow him now. And so that's a word, too, that like any kind of ministry you're doing, any kind of work you're doing, really can't ever end with you, And it shouldn't. You need to pass it down and let go. So that's a word to me. And then we're also going to look really quickly at 1 Corinthians 5. And this passage is really tough. It's specifically talking about sexual immorality defiling the church. And Paul gets really rough here and aggressive, saying, I cannot believe that there is sexual immorality tolerated among the believers in your congregation. And not only that you're boasting about it. And it's really interesting because he's very careful to make a distinction. It's okay for you to associate with people who are sexually immoral, greedy, swindlers, idolaters. It's okay to do that. Especially those who are, or only those who are out in the world. But once they're brought into the family of God, once they're a part of the congregation, once they are believers, and they bear the name of Christ, we cannot tolerate sin of any kind. He is specifically pointing out the issues that this church is dealing with, which is sexual immorality. And I feel like that, sadly, is rampant in any church all around the world. And probably that's why Scripture talks so much about that, because just as human beings, that's what we default to, is sexual sin. So he's saying, like, it's not just, like, don't judge people who are outside of the church, but rather, like, he says, God judges those outside the church. Like, we as believers cannot look at prostitutes and be like, we are so much better than you, but we are called, like Jesus, to eat with sinners, to be with sinners, to love sinners, to engage with them. But if though that kind of sin is happening within the church with people who have already decided to follow Christ, we need to be vigilant about getting that sin out. He says, purge, like, the evil out of you. And it sounds kind of harsh when he talks about, like, literally that person, kick that person out. And I mean, it's tough, but I feel like Paul knows what he's doing, in giving this instruction, probably realizing that once people notice the weight of their sin, if what they are doing, the sin that they're doing, is not being tolerated, and they're being told, like, go, you're out of the family, go, get this sin under control, that gives them a reality, like a wake-up call that their sin is serious. And one of the images that he uses is a little leaven leavens the whole lump. Like, cleanse out the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you really are unleavened. For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. And, he's really tapping into this imagery that the Israelites would understand, the Jewish people. The Passover, you are to take just unleavened bread, like flat bread. And he's tapping into this imagery and reminding them, like, okay, sin is like leaven. It does not matter the quantity. You put a little bit of leaven in your lump, and it's just gonna puff up the bread. It might not be huge, but already that leaven, or that lump, is leaven. So sin is the same way. It does not matter the quantity of sin. A little bit of sin just invades the soul. And this is really why we're dependent on Christ. Christ who cleanses us. Christ who gives us a new start. Even, God and his mercies are new every morning. We need those new starts every single morning. But God gives it to us by his grace. But he wants us to not just live off of that grace, but live because of that grace. Live in holiness because of that grace. So it's a tough passage, but it's a convicting passage. I personally have had a lot of experience talking to people who dealt with sexual sin, people I've mentored, and I myself too, have fallen into sin. And if we don't take it seriously, it's going to rule us. And it's also going to taint our ministry. It's going to taint our witness. So the more serious we can get about our sin, especially for those in leadership, the more Christ's name is lifted high. So just some thoughts. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.